What's the matter, Kakarot?
Good morning and welcome everybody back to another Sunday service with the Blerd Church of Anime. Who am I? Well, I'm your preacher, your teacher, sometimes cult leader, whatever, the messenger for the day. I am Black Star, here to kick you with a hopefully more positive message for y'all this week. Speaking of this week, boy, how was your week? Mine was actually pretty cool. I did a lot of things at work, and then I had a lot of fun things planned. Took a weekend trip, so it's pretty cool to be able to be back here with y'all this Sunday. The week before then, had a lot going on. So, and here comes my cat because, yeah, I can't record without her getting in my way. It's just the way it is. That's how my week is going. What about you? I hope you had a good week. I hope you were able to do some fun things, productive things. If not, if the week sucked, because sometimes some weeks do, we have to say F last week, and we're hoping that this week is even better for you. That's right. There's a lot of hope, a lot of wishing and wanting and doing the things to make it happen. This has been an election week, and I'm in a state where elections happened and things happened. Not all the way terrible, but not, exactly the way I wanted things either. But, you take the good and the bad, and my familiar is just going to keep coming back and forth into the camera because she can. You're just going to see the tail. It's just going to, oh, look, you see a head. See, Dante, you're in stream. See? Maybe this will get her annoyed enough to leave. Anyway, what I want to talk about this week, and I alluded to this the last episode, was Static Shock. Y'all, I have been rewatching all 4 seasons of Static Shock on Tubi. It's leaving Tubi at the end of August, so if you have not watched it, I just dig in. It's such a great show. Season 1 and season 3 are probably my 2 favorite seasons of the show, but I don't think there is a bad season among the 50 plus 60 episodes that they have. If you're not familiar with Static Shock, let me break this down for you, all right? So Static Shock is based off the superhero Static that was created by Dwayne McDuffie as part of the Milestone Media comic books. If you don't know about Milestone Media, because you're not a 90s person, not an 80s kid or person who grew up and could read them in the 90s, Milestone Media was one of those first larger Black-owned comic book companies. Dwayne McDuffie and Dennis Cohen and a few others all gathered together to create a more diverse superhero world, and they call it the Dakotaverse. That Bible is amazing if you can read it, and they launched their own comic book line. And let me just tell you, Dwayne McDuffie already had years in the industry. He'd written for DC, he had written for Marvel. Damage Control, which has come up a lot, especially the new Spider-Man movie. Damage Control was one of the comics that he wrote for Marvel that, became a whole thing unto itself. Anyway, so they created and they launched it, and Static was their teen superhero, black teen, their answer to Spider-Man, witty, has electric-based powers, all because of this thing called the Big Bang. And the Big Bang in the Dakotaverse / the Milestone Media Bible is where most people got their powers. Not everybody. Like, there's still some major characters like Icon, who is like the Black Superman, came from another planet, superhuman stuff, all that good jazz. And Rocket, his sidekick, who I love to death. I was not a big Icon fan. She gets super, alien tech to help her be a sidekick to Icon. But most other people, a lot of the characters we see, the heroes as well as the villains, are all birthed through this thing called the Big Bang. And what happens in the Dakotaverse, and this is also shown in episode 1 of Static Shock, is there's a big gang fight happening over at the docks in Dakota City. Dakota City is this urban city dwelling place. Clearly have a gang problem. Lots of different gangs, not just, 2 big gangs like the Bloods or Crips or whatever. There's a lot of things happening. A big gang fight happens, and the police comes in. Chemicals get dispersed, and everybody who is there gets hit with this gas, this chemical, and they create these superpowered beings, also known as Bang Babies. So clearly, it being a huge gang fight means a lot of people who get powers, infinite villains, because typically good people aren't in gangs. I have a whole dissertation on that, and I might get to a piece of that in today's topic, but just hold on to that. So this also includes one Virgil Hawkins, who is a teenager who gets invited to the gang fight because he's getting pressured to join a set. He is this nerdy kid, not trying to really do anything, but he is getting bullied and other gangs are pressuring him. So he happens to be at the docks that night as he's get called out, and of course he is hit with the gas. He escapes before police can get him, and he developed his his static power, so he can control a lot of electricity and stuff of that nature. And he becomes the superhero Static to help solve and stop crime, especially battle other meta babies, also known as the Bang Babies, metahumans, in his quest. And Static Shock it's a little bit more mature in the actual comics. But Static Shock, the TV series that ran in the early 2000s for WB, was definitely geared more towards kids. And it was a big deal because you finally saw like a black superhero leading the charge, not just like a side character. I will also say that I was a huge fan of Milestone Media. Static was always a really cool character, although I didn't really appreciate him until Static Shock came out when I was a kid and be able to watch it. And I personally loved Blood Syndicate, and that's if we get on Blood Syndicate, that is my conversation about gang members and the morality and giving people the do this. I have a lot of thoughts on gangs and how they come, the gangs, mafias, organized crime, all of that. Um, and then we also have other characters like Hardware, which is a really cool character. They have Zombie. Milestone Media was actually distributed through DC. And DC, the company did a lot to kind of help kind of fold some of their characters. Like there was an Icon versus Superman crossover. So they had a couple of crossover events. Eventually, Milestone Medias did fold. I mean, they had a lot of great artists come through, and they were getting poached by the big boys, and so then their quality started to suffer, and the money going into it, and they weren't getting the big brand deals. Like Static Shock wasn't made during the time Milestone Media was at its height. It was made years after because Dwayne McDuffie, again, being able to have that connection and just that history with DC, was able to make deals and like get that out there. And eventually though, and later in the 2000s, they did fold in Milestone Media into the DC universe. So it made sense for them to do Static Shock. It made sense for them to start bringing Static and Icon and Rocket into other comic books. They did do a relaunch of Static, the Rebirth of Cool. I want to say that's like in the 2010s. Yeah, I think it was like 2010s. And one of my favorite shows, Young Justice. This is one of the reasons why I loved Young Justice, because Young Justice was the first time I saw Icon and Rocket, mostly Rocket, animated on a DCAU, and I was so excited. They eventually bring in Static. I think it's like in the second season of Young Justice. But loved having them. Didn't do all of my people. Blood Syndicates really didn't get folded into it, but it is what it is. Milestone Media, look it up, you can find comic books. It was a really great ride. Anyway, we're talking about Static Shock, right? One thing I love about Static is not just him being, the black version of Spider-Man, because we now have Black Spider-Man. Shout out to you, Mouse. Is that the Static Shock show, especially me rewatching it as an adult, reminds me that like the prison industrial complex isn't always the right solution to how we deal with people. And this does go into a little bit of my thoughts about gangs. But I'm going to start off with one saying that Static Shock is a cartoon made for kids. All right. So you don't have a lot of death dismemberment. A lot of the crimes are property damage. There are fights, and most of the villainy is stealing, which makes sense when you think about the gang members, especially a lot of high school students who get powers and they're coming from a very urban environment. A lot of this is reading of like poor kids or people who don't have a lot. You get powers, you rob a bank. You get powers, you steal this thing. You get powers, you want a nice place to live. So a lot of Static, especially in the earlier seasons, villains or person of the week or just the side people he's dealing with that's not even bang babies, are thieves, people trying to steal stuff. Okay. But then he gets into a little bit more complicated scenarios. And I think Static is a really, really good example of still trying to have the moral high ground and saying what's right, what isn't, but also knowing that like the police, penal codes, putting people in jail isn't always the solution that we're looking for. And there's several episodes that lead me to that I really want to highlight. So then I do believe in law and order. I think you have to have rules. I think we have to be able to govern each other to make sure that we are not actively harming each other. Like I believe in community and community support so that we do not harm each other. I also understand a lot of things like organized crimes, mafia, families, gangs cause harm. They ultimately cause harm. And a lot of it's in the sense of capitalism. If you look at the history of organized crime, you look at the history of underground trades, look at the history of gangs, most of those groups, even like the motorcycle gangs, are groups of people who have been pushed out of capitalism. They're not allowed to be able to work. They're deemed unworthy in society to do work, which is a whole thing unto itself, right? So then they still need money to live. And so when you are pushed out of the economy, you make an underground economy. That's how you're getting the Al Capones. That's how you're getting the mafia families, especially the Irish mafia in New York, because they had little signs that say no Irish allowed. That's how you're getting black gangs, especially very impoverished areas, even in the California parts where, they don't want black people to work, where they don't think that you are civilized enough to be in certain jobs, to keep you at a certain depressed economic level. You need protection, especially protection from things like police. And so gangs come in and people who are left lonely without community are preyed upon, and they build these things. A lot of motorcycle gangs sell drugs because that's how they raise money for their families and their going-ons, because most of them are coming from lower income places. So you see a lot of people who engage in those organized criminal activities. A lot of the foot soldiers are coming from people who do not have a lot of economic options. That does, again, hurt some of your morals because you're willing to hurt people to get what you need and what you want for yourself, or yourself and the people you consider your family, whether that's actual blood family, whether that's your kids, whether that's your gang affiliation, the organized family, whatever. All right, so we already know that the Big Bang happens because we have all of these gang members in this place that get powers. And yes, you got some people who are automatically psychopathic, people, sociopathic, folk who like to cause destruction. There's a one particular character, Hot Streak, who is a kid from Virgil's high school who's already bullying him, according to the TV show. And one of the reasons why Virgil has to consider possibly joining Jane to get protection from this kid who obviously wants to physically abuse and hurt him. Once this guy gets power, and he gets powers, his Hot Streak of fire, he's out here causing destruction. He's out here harming people. Yep, locked up. One of Status' earlier bads, and he's a reoccurring villain every season. Then you get the people who are transformed by the Big Bang. So Static gets to look like his regular self. Virgil, for Static. Teen. But then you have people who are physically transformed, where they look like animals. There's one character, Talon, I think about, or they have forms that are too dangerous for them to be out. There is a girl who turns into water, like she doesn't have like a physical body, she's mostly water. There's also Ebon, who becomes a major antagonist. He can't deal with sun, or like he's a big shadow figure. Like, these people are never going to be able to work in regular life, especially as people continue to call the Big Bang, the Bang Babies, monsters. And so that's when I come into play again about how Ebon is able to find a lot of Bang Babies who do not have physical features that remain human, and are Bang Babies who have some type of mutation that doesn't allow them to be able to do certain things, like be out in the daytime. Now, there's a whole colony of Bang Babies who have to like live at night, or have to stay underground in the day and only come out at night because of their sensitivities. And he's able to collect those people again, kind of in a gang, to serve his nefarious purpose. And because Ebon cares about power, and he cares about being able to influence, put that power on the people, he's not using it for great reasons. That's why he's a major villain throughout the series. Then you also get the people who are doing bad things because they got a bad thing happen to them. A very interesting recurring character is Adam, aka Rubber Band Man. So when we first meet Adam, he is attacking a bunch of people at this record label because as a musician, his track gets stolen to be used for this rapper's major hit record. And so he's like, y'all stole from me. I need someone to pay me, and I'm going, do the hood thing where I'm going to intimidate until I get it. So he's intimidating people working at the record store. He intimidates the rapper. So he finally finds out it's the producer who is rich, lives out in the suburbs, got like one of them nice houses. They be storing cash everywhere. Rubber Band Man is like, nah, pay me what I owe. Pay me what you owe. Like, you disrespect me. And Static has to come in and stop it because, he is terrorizing people. He has not killed anybody. He has kind of hurt people, like, putting a rapper on top of a spiral where he could fall is, kind of death adjacent. But it's a kid's show. Nobody dies. And he actively stops Adam. And Adam does go to jail because Adam has done bad things. But he goes to go save the record producer, but he also like, I'm warning you because you stole money from him and like, he got every right to come after you, but I'm trying to keep you safe. And then he realized that the record producer is already trying to kill Adam. And that also like kind of turned where it's like a wrong and another wrong doesn't make a right. But there's this moment of like, Adam going to jail doesn't feel like justice. And I think from that moment, we see Virgil kind of like turning his head towards what are other ways to deal with this. Like, yeah, Adam did some stuff. He was trying to steal money. He was trying to hurt people. He goes to prison. He gets out of prison, has to go back to prison. And then he eventually turns a new leaf and becomes a hero himself. He decides, he wants to live life helping people like Static does because like he eventually is made whole from the people stealing his music. He gets to be a musician. So then he decides I can also help people, which is another whole thing about, helping people where they are versus, us continually taking from folk. But I think we see later in season 1, though, he comes across a couple of other bang babies where he doesn't leave them for the police. In fact, he holds his peace on a couple of things. An interesting one is Derek. I forget what Derek's bang baby name was. I think it was something like Destruct, like Destructive. Destruct, I think was his name. Derek is like this kid from Virgil's high school, track star. His is the late reaction to the Big Bang, and he turns like this giant blue kind of like power monster. And it catches Derek off guard. He accidentally like causing some property destruction. He runs because they're talking about bang babies being monsters, and he looks like a monster. He goes from this cool, suave, I'm going to college for track to giant monster, right? And so Ebon catches him up. He's like, come with the rest of us who we can't have a normal life. This is how we're going to have the things that we need. This is how we're going to push people and steal and be able to make our due. And then when he is confronted with Static and says like, your mom still wants you to come home, your mom misses you, Destruct does a very brave thing because there's no guarantee that he could go home to his mom and be like, hey mom, I'm Derek, I'm a monster now, and her fully accept him. She does because it's a happy story, but then Static doesn't refer Destruct to police to be held under property because, again, he was kind of manipulated by Ebon and that gang, but he decides to put himself into scientific research so they can like study the bang and study bang babies and understand and hopefully come up with the cure, which we eventually kind of see towards the last season. So I think this is one of the first times we really see Static do the alternate from just go to the police and let them handle it. Like, he does make the conscious decision to keep Derek out of that situation and then put him in a place where he can do the most good while also still being able to access his mom and do that kind of thing. I love the redirection, and I think that's a really big theme of Static is redirection. His dad works as the head of a community center. He sees lost teens and stuff coming through, and he tries to give them a safe place and redirect them. And there's no better episode of this than the one with the kid. There's a little kid who has the powers to manifest anything. And this little kid has this power. The kids having power, especially young kids, it's always hit or miss. And this kid can create whatever he wants, whether it's frosting snow or a fountain of cherry pop, which is cool as all get out. I'm here for the cherry pop. But then he has his stepbrother who is getting out of juvie, has a chip on his shoulder. And once his stepbrother realizes the little boy, the little brother, has these powers, he is now manipulating the kid to steal. And he's saying things like, oh, that bank was really mean to your mom and to me, and they steal money from everybody. You should go in and use your powers to do this. Or, oh, that clothing store makes it where nobody can afford clothing. It's so bad. Anything I don't use will give to the poor. I mean, like, Aaron had some bars, anti-capitalistic there, but he was really just doing it for himself and using this kid. Once that realized what's going on, he doesn't be like, take this kid to jail, take this kid for research. He's like, this is a kid who is confused because he's being manipulated by someone he considers an older brother, someone he wants to look up to. This is the older brother who's really like doing this work. It's not this kid. And the kid is like, I'm going to pause until I know what the right thing to do is. And that is a major thing to talk about. Because I think when we look at crime, especially among juveniles, especially among young people and teens, there's this idea of everybody should know better, that everybody should be doing better, and where are the parents, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, where you're kind of missing some of the point of what is the situation in the system they're growing up in, or what they know to be true for them, and what is important to them. And locking everyone away doesn't always have the effect you want. Like Aaron being put in juvie because he's this bad kid whatsoever, angry teen, only further reinforces his chip on his shoulder and his ability to get even at the system. What do you think would happen to the little boy with powers if they did the same thing? Because then now it's not just a simple mistake of being manipulated, but now the world has been cruel to him, so now he's going to be cruel to the world. It just makes sense, and unfortunately it does, and I hate that for him. But I think seeing like a hero like Static come in and kind of redirect that path, so it's not always the only thing you're doing. If you're doing wrong, is to get put in prison, is to get put in scientific research. It's like, okay, how do we further support you into making good decisions? That's why Rubber Band Man is able to come back and try his hand at being a hero when he's already seen as being like this dangerous bang baby because he like put a wrapper on the top of the spiral and all this good jazz. Because I'm not saying there shouldn't be a space. I'm not saying there are not people who are out here to actually harm and hurt. There are definitely people with like mental things, whether you're a psychopath or sociopath or whatever, who don't feel empathy. There's definitely people out here who want to actually cause harm. I'm not saying that gangs or mafia families are a boon to our economy or whatever, but they are people or groups that are responding out of how society has treated them. And I think there has to be pathways as a whole, as communities, to help people kind of repush that thing, because gelling doesn't work. Prison doesn't work because people come out of prison, they just have their stripes, Now it just proves that they got the street cred, and now they've learned from prison other things to do. Recidivism is a huge deal because when you come out, you're further punished, and then only other criminals love you, and now you don't only know like the criminal lifestyle. Like you're really doing a whole pipeline here. So I'm just saying, like, as a community of people who maybe were never been criminally minded, I don't think I ever had to really truly worry about going to jail or going to prison for ripping people off, stealing, property destruction, any of that stuff. Because in my moral stuff, I'm going to do, I'm not trying to harm nobody. But I also think, like, if I as someone who believes in restorative justice, I know just isolating people and throwing them away into a box with other bad people doesn't solve the problem. And I want us to talk about being more nuanced. I think even if a superhero can look and say, hey, yeah, you're robbing stuff, I'll leave you for release, we'll deal with it. But also, hey, this is a little bit more complicated. We need to figure out a better way to deal with the situation and maybe not always have the police involved. It's also admirable. Will you always get good results? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, there's a whole situation with Alva Sr. and his son who was like destroying his dad's company because his dad loves his company more than him. And then Static doesn't go to police and be like, I know who this person is. Static goes to his dad and be like, it's your son taking your stuff, in hopes that they can reconcile. And they don't, because Alva is a greedy billionaire tech person doing a lot of legal stuff, whatever, you can watch the episode yourself. But it's more important to him saying, like, jail and prison and the system isn't always what's necessary to solve the problem. And I think we see that throughout all 4 seasons of Static Shock. And it's why I do tend to like heroes that are not coming from this Boy Scout American way, trust the system, trust the police. It's nice to see a black kid who has suffered law school. Let's not forget that Virgil lost his mother to gang violence as well. Like, he's dealing with a single dad and an older sister, and they're dealing with their own grief. But somebody who can understand that there are in-betweens, that there isn't an absolute version of right and wrong. People may be doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, kind of like Adam with Rubber Band Man and trying to get his money from getting his song stolen. And some people who are doing the right things for the wrong reasons, which is why he's always real cautious when new heroes show up. But also the idea that, like, some people's choices are kind of like pushed on them and they need additional support. Because I'll be very honest with you, like, I love the Rogue Gallery on Static. Like, I love seeing these black and brown and Asian and like diverse characters, where they're heroes and they know it, or they're villains and they know it, or they don't know it, because you got a couple people who don't even realize they have powers. And I genuinely love, what's her name? Puff. Puff is my girl, boy. She's a bounty hunter, and something about Puff. Like, I love that she came back season 2 and season 3. Like, she's my girl, and she is kind of morally ambiguous because she's a bounty hunter and she doesn't always use the best tactics to do what she needs to do. But she's someone who dropped out of school, trying to make money, trying to survive. It is what it is, And I think a lot of us can understand the in between, and we can get down with the gray. I think it's okay to have heroes who have a strong moral backing, but also understand the people that live in the gray. That's it. So, yeah, if you're not watching Static, you got to, in August, like, get on it, watch it. It's so good. Like, they rope in Justice League. Like, that Batman in there. They got Superman and Robin, and the Justice League is in there for an episode. They got Batman Beyond is in there too. Like, if you're a fan of any of those shows in that time period, like, you will not be disappointed. If you don't know, Dwayne McDuffie is like the co-creator and was a big producer on Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. And if you love the way those storylines worked out, you're going to love Static Shock. So just really pushing for those who may not know, and those who do know but you haven't watched in a year, and wow, it's on Tubi. You should watch it. And with all that, I'm going to sign off. Got lots of things to do today now that I'm back in town, and I will catch you on the next time, okay? All right. Bye! The Blerd Church of Anime podcast is produced by Black Star, a.k.a. Lauren Tillman, written by Lauren Tillman, and hosted by Lauren Tillman. Music created by EL47.